Hello, I'm Alexandr Burilkov and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Germany's recent election marks a turning point for Europe's largest economy. As coalition talks begin, key questions emerge. Will a likely Christian Democrat coalition, with SPD, the Social Democrats, being present on board as well, reform the strict debt brake to boost investment and defense spending? How will Germany respond to US tariff threats and shifting transatlantic relations, especially with Donald Trump back in the picture? In today's interview, we will discuss the economic, fiscal and geopolitical implications of the election results, exploring what they might mean for Germany's future role in Europe and beyond. Today I'm joined by Alexandr Burilkov, Assistant Director for Research at GLOBSEC GeoTech Center. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So let's begin with the current situation. Insofar as the economy is concerned, where is Germany standing at this very moment?
So Germany at the moment is in a difficult position, with industrial inputs continuing to fall year over year, with growing energy prices and with a lack of public investment because of the aforementioned Schuldenbremse, the debt brake, the constitutional mechanism by which Germany needs to keep a balanced budget. There is also a very slow pace of digitalization, which hampers innovation in the German economy, a very high regulatory burden as well, which also hampers innovation. So Germany at the moment, economically speaking, is very much at the crossroads. And it is not an easy situation to be in. And the situation that it finds itself is in no small part the reason why there have been earlier elections than anticipated.
There were some enthusiastic reactions from the markets following the elections. Could this simply be about the brief faith in change always appears after a new government is about to begin work? Or do you think it could be more long-lasting? Do you think the new government could live up to the task of bringing Germany up from this sort of doldrums it has found itself in?
So the enthusiasm from the markets comes from several reasons. The first one is that the election result is the anticipated result based on the polls, but still it's now set. That means we will have most likely a coalition with only two parties, so not as dysfunctional as the previous coalition. Furthermore, the chancellor will be, as we all know by now, Friedrich Merz, who is a very business-friendly chancellor who has promised to slash regulatory burden, to increase public spending, to focus on innovation. These are all things that the markets are very happy to hear. He has also made some comments about the energy transition and the need to return to certain forms of energy that no longer exist. This could mean less of a burden when it comes to energy prices. So, of course, there is a lot of optimism right now. He has also, most critically for Germany, promised to close the coalition talks by Easter, which would be a very fast process for Germany, and it would be a strong signal of stability for the upcoming government, which, of course, is exactly what the markets want to hear as well. So there is a lot of optimism, which is quite justified at the moment, especially when it also comes to his promise for more public spending in defense and in other sectors, which would be very much welcomed.
Do you think this will be a more pragmatic economic approach? You've mentioned energy, and one move which was criticized by many, both in Germany and outside Germany, was shutting down nuclear power plants at a time when Europe was facing an energy crisis caused by Russia. Do you think that nuclear energy could be back on the menu, so to speak?
That is difficult to say. The interesting thing about shutting nuclear energy down in Germany proper is that Germany still imports nuclear energy from France. So this is one of these kind of peculiarities of the current situation. Could it potentially come back? It's hard to say, and it will have much to do with coalition talks. The government would have a majority, does not have a supermajority necessarily. So passing legislation will depend in large part to being able to work with the Greens and to a certain extent potentially with the Left Party, which has reformed itself and rid itself of its previous pro-Russian sympathies. So we'll have to see whether such reforming the energy market in Germany will be possible. Certainly, thanks to European interconnectedness in the electrical grid and so on, there has been some positive movement already in German energy markets, but it is too early to tell whether such drastic moves as bringing back nuclear are possible.
So you've also mentioned fiscal reforms, in particular the question of the debt brake. But can these reforms be introduced without being hampered by the AfD in Parliament?
This is going to be the really big question going forward. There is one thing that should be clear, which is that there is a lot of political will for reforming the debt brake, at least on some dimensions. And the main one is defense. And when it comes to defense, basically every party in the parliament, aside from the left party, agrees that it is necessary to spend more. Even the AfD has talked about in their campaign for spending 5% of GDP, which is also the target that the Americans have asked when it comes to European defense spending. So if at the very least on defense, it is very likely that we will see some solution either via reform of the debt brake or the use of a state of emergency, as former Chancellor Scholz talked about in his last days in office. So this is one sector where for sure we'll see movement. Will that translate to broader movement overall? Is still too early to tell because of the gridlock nature of the new parliament and the very slim majority enjoyed by the coalition. It will really come down to informal negotiations between the parties.
So everything we're talking about is happening at a time when the geopolitical landscape is changing fairly rapidly. Do you think that Germany will be able to navigate these choppy seas, in particular when it comes to relations with the US, for example? After all, it's not just about politics. It's also about trade. It's also about selling vehicles, for example, cars going into the US, and the question of the tariffs that Trump is promising to introduce. What do you think is going to happen on this front?
So Chancellor Merz has come out already very strongly discussing and talking about strategic autonomy for Germany, strategic autonomy for Europe. It's important to note that the main component of that is essentially a discussion about increasing European defense spending, which of course is necessary in the very difficult geopolitical situation at the moment, but is also something that the United States is requested Europe to do recently. So if the foundation of strategic autonomy for the new German government is to increase defense spending, to make the Bundeswehr more capable, and to procure more weapon systems at short notice, this is something that will be viewed very positively in Washington, D.C. So what we are likely to see is that there will be a kind of accommodation that will be reached over time between the new chancellor and the new coalition and the U.S. So when it comes to tariffs, we will have to see to what extent and how they will be implemented. But certainly should the new German government, as is necessary, decide to procure more weapons at short notice, it's not so easy to tap into the European market. The American market is always there. It's always possible to buy there. And that is something that will be viewed very, very positively.
And you're not afraid that things could go terribly wrong when it comes to cooperation between Europe and the US, and so Europe could be, in a way, drawn into cooperation with China instead, on the economic front at least?
Cooperation with China is going to always be a difficult issue at the European level because we have to reach a consensus between all the member states on how to go about it, because Europe's own rules when it comes to trade stipulate for multilateral negotiation. And not all member states, this is important, feel the same way about cooperation with China. There are some countries that are very skeptical of this. Instead, when it comes to cooperation with the United States, we have a very long history of that that has faced difficulties in the past as well. It's not that everything, for instance, during the Cold War was smooth sailing between the European allies and the United States. So, of course, this moment now is is a difficult moment in the transatlantic relationship. There has been something of a shock, especially at the Munich Security Conference some time ago. But over time, it is likely that there will be a way to live with each other that will arise via negotiations between us in Europe and the United States.
Alexandr Burilkov was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Jonasz Rywnicki. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.